Let's take it away.
All right. So a lot of you have been in Meez for a while and you've got menus built out, or this is usually the end goal if you have come to Meez to have your food costing, to improve your food costs, to get a handle on your food costs, um, and to, you know, improve your food costs and have something actionable in front of you. So I'm going to share my screen and put up a couple of examples, and then we're going to jump right in to build a couple of menu items into a brand new menu. Um, so um, everybody should
Boom.
see my screen now, right?
Yep, we're good.
All right. So couple of menus here that I've built out, essentially, we are going to build out the menu item name, just how it reads on your menu. More importantly, how you want to view it. And if your POS does not have SKU numbers or menu ID numbers, then this name will need to match how it shows up on your POS as well, because then that will be what ties it together. If you do have menu item ID numbers and your POS comes out with like PEP DRM as like abbreviations, then of course we can write these so that we're able to view it and take action on it. So within a menu, we're going to link to the items, the recipes, but they can be recipes or they can be ingredients. So everything that makes up that menu item. It can be one recipe, it can be a combination of 6 recipes and ingredients. So for that example, I usually like to show a couple different menus that I have built out, but I pulled up another one. So
This
a great
moment is
example.
just to show you what is possible, and then we will get into the actual interactive part of this.
Yeah. And a great example is, building a wine list as a menu. There's no recipes. We're just putting in the ingredients, just the purchase items, bottles of wine that we're purchasing, how we're selling them, you buy the bottle or by the glass. Once we have that, then of course we have an ingredient that we can call out by the 5 ounces or by the single bottle.
Right.
Um,
Super valuable on the drink list. Uh to understand like it might be easy for you to know, like recognize what my food cost percentage is on one bottle of wine or one glass of wine. But the power of menus really shows up when you start comparing the sales of those bottles of wine and those glasses of wine and weighting them against one another. That is what drives your overall menu cost. And wine lists are a great place to start with this to understand which bottles are actually worth having on your shelf, which are driving the revenue in your restaurant. This is a great tool to use for
And
that.
and a menu in Meez, once we have built it and we have sales numbers, this is really all we pull from your point of sale is going to be the menu item name, the sell price, and the quantity sold. Everything else is calculated by Meez, and everything else we can take action on. We can sort these by our highest food cost items on our drink menu, our highest food cost, not just percentage, but the actual number. Which ones are making us the most money? That Etna
Right.
Rosato, $70 every time they sell a bottle. Great. Let's sell more
Crushing it.
of those. And then again, this can be adjusted easily to become a glass pour. So say we wanted to make this item a glass pour instead, no problem. We change this to glass. And instead of the whole bottle, then like calling out ingredients, we can call them out in any quantity that we have here. It's a 5 ounce pour. And then, of course, that's going to have a different price. Otherwise, we're making a crazy amount of money on it. But then we're getting our cost of $3.46 per glass, maybe charging $12. And there's a new item there.
Nice.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Building our new menu from scratch from the plus new side over here, where we build out new recipes, new recipe books, documents, count sheets. This is where everything begins in Meez that we're creating. So we can start off by building a new menu and assigning it to, if you are a single unit, you're going to have one concept on this drop down. My demo account has a few different concepts here, and we're going to be working and then eventually importing into Sergio's Taqueria and Tequila today. So let's start here with our test menu that we're going to build out a couple of items manually here.
So everybody should be going now to plus new in their Meez account and then hitting menu. Name the menu, assign it to a concept. Maybe you only have one. And then hit done. And then throw a thumbs up in the chat when you're there with us.
Also, a quick name is fine because afterwards, when you're working in your menu, you can always write anything you want here. Test menu 2.0, test menu June 6th, anything you want there. So
Waiting on one thumb. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, we got two. Let's go. Let's
all
add
right.
the first menu item.
First menu item then. Let's pull something up and maybe we're going to start in by doing our taco supreme. And our taco supreme, maybe we have a couple of different tacos on the menu. And we're going to search and basically find a recipe or an ingredient to link this to. And this is just like the field in Meez when you are writing a recipe line by line. You're going to start searching here and you're going to see recipes as well as ingredients, as well as Meez system ingredients with the logo there. And then we say, oh, our Supreme, we don't quite have that in yet, but we know that our Supreme starts with a carne asada taco, or maybe our Supreme can be any of our tacos with additional toppings on it. So this is a very basic menu we're building here, of course, but hey, who doesn't love a good taco? So maybe we want to add sour cream to our taco Supreme. Great. And when we don't put any quantity here, Meez is going to assume it is one order of this recipe or one of however that yield is defined. So my carne asada plate we can look at here is defined as one serving. So we're going to leave it as, we're going to leave that blank and it assumes one serving there. Sour cream, on the other hand, it's probably purchased or costed by the pound. So we don't want to put a pound of sour cream on our taco. Maybe our taco supreme get 1 ounce of taco or 1 ounce of sour cream across both tacos. Um, and maybe additionally, there's pico de gallo. We're putting, all the toppings on it. And we're doing 1 ounce of that. And guacamole too. Why not?
Super supreme.
Super Supreme tacos here. So here, we've basically told Meez what we're selling. We're selling a taco that costs $3.66. Boom.
So what you're saying, Sergio, is I need to have all of my recipes built in Meez before I build a menu?
Not necessarily, because your menu can be built. Again, we didn't have a taco supreme recipe. We had a base
Sure.
recipe. Maybe we have a base burrito recipe, and I've worked with a lot of concepts. Some of them are pizzas, some of them are tacos, very basic like this, where their menu reports end up being mostly modifiers.
Mhm.
They do the base pizza or the base taco with toppings, add chicken, add braised beef, add sour cream. All of this becomes part of a menu mix. And the question then becomes, how do we track all that when it's coming in? And from your menu, if that is how your menu is built, then all of those modifiers are usually buttons, items, features that you're going to be punching in. And so when you have something like we said, that base burrito, and let's just say that that's our item. And I don't think I have a burrito recipe built. Let's see. I have burrata.
Perfect.
But let's create a new recipe for a burrito because we can do that right there. And then we can come back in and fill it in with our basic, our ground beef, our rice, and whatever else might be there.
Right. So that's underlined in red, and we have a little error message there because that's an empty recipe and there's no costing information, is what that's saying.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So
So
what do we do now? How do we fix that?
well, we could go right into the recipe to actually add items to that recipe. And we'll just make this quick here. There's 3 ounces of ground beef. There is 1 tortilla. And as we're adding these items, if they're not costed, we're also going to get red arrows there. So we're really quickly adding in
But
some.
hang on, slow down, because what if I've never costed this before? Show me how to cost. I just put in a flour tortilla and I just created that ingredient. What do I do?
Yeah, brand new ingredient here. So when you're costing manually, this is as simple as putting in. You could, of course, break it down to what you pay per tortilla, but we want Mies to do the math for us. We're not doing this completely manually. We have a tool in front of us. So maybe we're paying $29 for 100 tortillas.
Okay.
100 count case for $29. Now our tortilla is going to have a cost of $29 divided by 100, of course,
Right.
when we're
Okay.
calling out one each.
Cool.
Now our baseline burrito, maybe get some rice. And maybe we're going to add chopped onions into this, as somebody's asking about the chopped onion prep action. So maybe that's going to get 2 ounces onion chopped.
So whenever there's a comma in an ingredient in meez, that is usually indicative of a prep action behind that.
Yeah. So prep actions and meez, if you're not familiar, is part of our ingredient database built in. We've covered this on a recent webinar. And you're able to then select a prep action. Basically, what this is meez has done a lot of the research work ahead of time. Years in development before launching meez, we have a database of almost 3,000 ingredients. Onion, of course, has probably the most prep actions because it's an ingredient that people do the most actions with: dice, peel, julienne, slice, shave. And these have yield percentages worked into them, as well as the conversions of weight to volume to each. So we know how many onions, we know how much volume that is, so that when we're then adding it here, that ounces of onions is going to be calculating. Looks like our one location didn't have a cost yet. And however we're buying that, it's going to work backwards from that whole price and add in that 30% when we're talking about chopped, so that that cost of our onions is going to be translating, adding in the 30% loss into those 2 ounces to give us that down to the penny.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, can we, so it's still red, and I'm assuming that it's still red because we missed a yield on that.
And our yield is missing here because we have
Yeah.
not yet defined as 1 serving. So even though it's assuming it's 1 in the menu, the recipe still needs to be defined as a serving.
Perfect.
Or a 1 each, or whatever tells it that this is now what we are plugging in here. Now we just need to refresh and get rid of the red there. And now we're seeing our base burrito now has a cost and could then be our net, again, all those modifiers could then become add guacamole. And this is going to be something that in a minute, when we import a menu, I can show you. In this case, add guacamole, like we were doing on the tacos, can be a 1 ounce portion to make sure that, we're controlling it in the kitchen. And those modifiers then are going to ring in however many add guacamoles are coming through to your burritos. You might have sold 200 burritos, some with add guacamole, some with add chicken, some with a combination of both. So we're going to see all of that in that menu mix report.
Very cool. Let's take a time out and make sure, has everybody had a chance to create one menu item? As Sergio's kind of been speeding through some of the different scenarios here. At this point, you should have one menu item created, no food cost in there, or sorry, no sell price, but you should see food cost. Does anybody need help getting their food cost? Tina, you're good? Okay, so I see a lot of blanks on here, like an ad under category, sell price is empty, there's red stuff. I want to resolve it.
Yeah. Okay. So categories, however they come through on your PMix, however it's going to be easiest for you to look at. You can create categories on the fly, add a new category. They can be entrees, they can be sides, however you see them, however you want to view them and sort these so that you can address them. Maybe we call this one modifiers. And there's categories. Our sell price, right off the menu, we will talk about how this can change when we import a sales report. But for this menu that we're doing manually, we're going to put in exactly how we charge for them. So our Taco Supreme, we're getting $11.99 for 2 tacos. We're getting $12 for a burrito, and adding guacamole to a burrito costs $1.50.
Nice.
Now the only red dots showing are our quantity sold.
So right away, right here, just by having sell price and the food cost, I can now see my food cost percentage and my profit margin flat, right? So just as if it were in the recipe cost calculator, which you can see at the recipe level. Serge, would you go back and show that?
Mm-hmm.
So on these carne asada tacos, in the cost tab at the very bottom here, there's a food cost calculator that lets you adjust your and see kind of a little bit of this information, not the whole picture, but a little bit of this information at the individual recipe level. So we know this one portion costs $3.11. If we put that in at what are we charging? $12? Something like that, $11.99.
$11.99. So in this could be really like a sandbox before you're building a menu, when you're first costing out, developing your recipe, R&Ding it. Because as you see, when I plug in a sell price, it calculates the food cost and profit automatically.
Love
I
that.
can also then take this and say, tacos at 25% food cost, I'm really hoping to improve our profit this year. So we're looking at that maybe at 22%. And as you can see, all of these factors calculate the others automatically. Maybe we want to make sure that as long as we're making $10 on every order of tacos, then we can keep the price around $13 and
Nice.
be making that sweet spot of $10 that we want. This does
Okay,
not transfer over to menus because this is, like I said, a bit of a sandbox for each
right,
recipe
separate.
as you're R&Ding it.
Yeah, so this is on the individual level, but then when I'm looking at the menu, what is the difference? Why would I do this?
Because here you're going to have, again, you're going to have, this might be a base recipe that you're adding to, like we're doing in this Taco Supreme. Uh,
Right,
and this is also going to be driven by exactly what you are selling. So this
right.
is real time what we'll put in here, especially when we import it in from our sales report. And doing it at the recipe level gives us the ability to R&D it and to really engineer this recipe before we
Yep.
get into menu engineering. Because all
Okay.
of these quantities will show in real time if I make a change here, and then I can play with that cost as I play with the recipe here.
Wow, that was so cool.
But
Okay.
the recipe cost, of course, is translating the change I just made there on the cost, not on the price, now translates to this whole menu item.
Right, right. Okay, so
Now,
now the last red dot.
yep. Before I put in like actual numbers, this is a spot that shows us um, where if I just put a quantity sold of 1 for each of these, then we're basically seeing our overall menu cost as an average of these 3 food costs of these 3 menu items. But that's not how it works in restaurants. You're not
Right.
selling the
You're
exact
not
same
selling
amount of
one of
every product.
everything. Right.
Yeah.
So before we go deeper on quantity sold, Tina said, just to confirm, I should build the recipe first before building the menu. The answer, Tina, is maybe. Maybe that makes sense, right? So Sergio showed how the burrito, we didn't have a recipe, we just built the recipe live. You can also create a menu item just out of individual products if you know the ratio, right? Individual ingredients. Can we do that, Serge? Can we just build one
Yep.
that, it doesn't have to be a real thing,
No.
but
Well, let's say this. Let's say you also want to make sure that you track how many takeout orders and how many paper goods you're sending out. So we have we can build as many of these, paper goods number one, because there's bigger orders, there's smaller orders. And in this one, we have, a BioPack container. Oh, I thought I had those created in this account. So we create a BioPack container here that can be one. BioPack number 2, give that a cost. We can add napkins to this. And so in this case, this can be our recipe as we're starting to build it with ingredients that, in this case, don't have a cost, but we go in there and start assigning them costs. But we're essentially
so these
building.
are underlined in red right now because the BioPack 2, Sergio just created. So that ingredient doesn't yet have a cost. So he's going to go into that ingredient right now and add a cost and then come back to the menu item and adjust there. So to answer your question, Tina, you can just add ingredients. If you know that your burrito is 1 flour tortilla and 2 ounces of sour cream and 3 ounces of ground beef, you could add all of those things right here. And even if they didn't already exist in your meez account, you can cost them from right here. as far as a best practice goes, we typically recommend start with your recipes, right? Like build your plates as you know them. But maybe you don't want to include the garnish on every plate recipe. Maybe that's not the most important thing when you're talking about training or what you want your cooks to focus on, but you want to think about those things when you get to costing. And like Sergio's saying, maybe you don't want to have your paper goods don't need to be on a recipe, right? But they should be on a menu if it's a to-go menu or a Grubhub or whatever. Those things really add up. So anytime you see a red line under an item or that little exclamation point, that's an indication that something is missing. So open it up, take a look. Is it because we don't have it in the right location here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Too many concepts and locations in my account, folks.
Yes. So we're adding the, okay, perfect. Tina said, okay, makes sense. So we're adding the cost for the ground beef. Done. Beautiful.
It's not letting me select there for some reason. Because that's what I need, this location. There we go.
Okay. So now let's add the categories for those. Or can we make the red thing go away for paper goods?
Yep.
Red is bad. Are we in Brooklyn Larder in your menu? Getting deep here. There we go.
Thank you.
So 1,000 count case is $15 or $19, whatever. So now we know that will cost when we go back to the menu and refresh. And we are good there. Beautiful. Red little error indication is gone.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody need help filling in categories or sell price before we get into quantity sold and what that means? I think we're good.
Cool.
Let's talk quantity sold.
Okay, so on quantity sold then, we're going to put in how many Taco Supreme did we sell in the given date range. You know, we can do a week of this, or our imports might have it elsewhere. And here we're going to put in 29 tacos this week, or in 1 day report, 34 burritos, 19 add guacamoles. 3 of these orders were takeout, which maybe we're not charging for, so we can leave that as a price, you know, and then
Right.
you can start figuring out, should we be charging for takeout if our bio packs are getting expensive? As you saw, I gave the bio packs a really nominal price. Anybody in the takeout business knows that they are not cheap.
It was not
Uh,
that cheap. Yeah.
Yep. I am aware of that as I put them in. And, you know, then maybe this burrito 2.0 we sold another 32 of. Now our menu cost is getting interesting because this is no longer an average of these food costs. This is now weighted by our items. So that means if our lowest food cost item becomes our best seller and we end up selling, add these guacamoles, that's a low food cost item, you see that menu cost coming down. If our highest food cost item is rocking it, then that's going to drive the food cost up, of course.
Right.
And that's going to be what we start talking about in a later webinar. We're going to talk about the analytics of these menus and how to analyze that. But in a nutshell, this is really what is going to constitute a well-balanced menu. You
Right.
are going to have high food cost items. We've talked about this in previous webinars. There are sweet spots. There's your heroes that are really the stars on your menu, I mean, that are really making you profit. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at here.
Says the items are a menu item. Why add guacamole as a menu item? Is it because it's an add-on? In this case, we're adding it because it's a modifier that you might have on your POS, right? So if somebody orders a burrito and they want to add guacamole, you would charge for that guacamole. If you're getting that from your sales mix, you have the opportunity to also see that represented here, right? To know that are these modifiers that you have, are you charging enough for sour cream? Should you be charging for sour cream? You know, like those are the questions that you can answer based on using menus here to understand what is it really costing you and what impact is that having on your overall menu cost percentage? So
Yeah.
would you touch on track variance there, that fun little button that I just really want to touch?
Yep. So when we are doing menu engineering for a future menu, when we want to improve this menu, when we touch this track variance button, it's now grabbing a snapshot. It's freezing what we have on the menu so far, and any changes that I make now, it's going to calculate the difference between where the menu was when I froze it and any changes that I make. Changes like, hey, this taco supreme at 27%, we should do better than that. Now we know that this is theoretical. We might have imported an actual snapshot as we're engineering it. Now we're going to see that that dollar raise is going to make us an additional $89 in profit and revenue.
Right, that makes
Maybe it
sense.
affects our sales numbers. We can also play with those. You know, maybe that price hike makes us sell 9 less tacos that week. Well, we
Right.
still made an additional $2.
And our overall menu
But
cost percentage is still down.
by the skin of our teeth.
Yes,
We
yes,
made a
just
little more
barely.
profit. Total revenue was down, but more of that revenue was profit by $2.
Right,
So this is something that, again, maybe we're looking at this and saying, yeah, but we're actually just added a whole new section, an outdoor deck, where we're going to double our covers. So maybe that's then going to change this to 160 units. And with that price change, then we're able to see that now we're looking at, playing with the volume, or we can always be um, kind of realistic and pessimist when it comes to building our menu, which is what I would tend to do. If I'm raising a price, I'm going to assume that that's going to affect my sales to make
totally.
sure that that price change is making sense to me. If it's
Right,
really going to
so
impact our sales that much, yeah,
maybe not.
yeah,
Right. So at this moment in time, when purchasing prices are kind of all over the place and it's a super volatile market, um, if you are considering making price changes to your menu before it goes to your customer, this is a super powerful tool to play around with the what ifs, right? So if I raise the price, then you're likely to sell fewer. If I raise the price by $1 and I sold 10% fewer or 15% fewer, what happens to my bottom line? You can see maybe you bring in less revenue, but you actually make more profit. Or maybe maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you make less revenue and you also make less profit. Like, so making those decisions kind of without menus and all of your costs populated here is basically you're just flying in the dark and just trying to see what is going to happen. This is not the moment to be doing that. So this is a super powerful tool to help you make those decisions. And just another note on Shani's question, as far as like, whether or not you want to add modifiers, if you want to see all of those tiny little pieces that might add up to a bigger picture, this is really preference for you, right? Like, how are you running your business? The level of granularity of the data that you put in gives you the granularity of the reporting that you're going to get out. So if what really makes a difference is not the ad guacamole, because as far as percentage of sales, it's probably not a huge portion. But if it's not that, then maybe don't spend the time there. Put your time where it's really going to drive the most impact on your business, but you won't know that unless you're building your menu and you have the pieces there together.
yeah. I pulled this other menu out, which has a interesting mix of food on it, but just to show that example that here's a menu item that has a recipe and an ingredient added to it as well. And so I could have a recipe that is just the side of guac and chips. This makes it easy for me because if we realize that our guac and chips need to be more profitable, then this is something where we can action right here without going into the recipe, cut that portion back and maybe add more chips or whatever it is and see how that impacts and how that changes the food cost on this item.
Right. Okay, Search. So everybody has at least one menu item built at this point, right? Does anybody need help getting their menu item built? Taking the silence as a no. Okay. From there, so Serge, what's next? Like, okay, so let's say I build my menu and I've already decided I didn't change any prices. and I'm not at a point where I need to change prices or even think about retooling a menu. What do I do with this? Where do I put it? Where does it go? Because I
Sorry,
mean,
say that again, sir.
ideally, I'm thinking about what happens when I want to look back at this menu 6 months from now, right?
Mhm.
Like, and compare. How do I do that?
So we're going to want to export out the analytics of this menu to then view it and see it that way. So our analytics dashboard here, and we're going to be getting really deep into this on the next session, is going to give us the breakdown of this menu per item, this very small menu. Um, and here we're able to select any menu that I've got built out. We're sticking with this test menu because that's the one that we clicked on there. And it's
Nice.
giving us here our dog stars, not a lot of data. So we're getting these showing as selling one. Oh, and that's because it hasn't
Oh, it
changed
hasn't updated.
quantities yet. Yeah.
Maybe let's use your summer menu just to see
Yeah.
that part. Oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that if you click analytics from within the menu, so Sergio, go back to the menu and show it. Where do you
Yeah.
go? So if you go from the three dots there, it's called a kebab. They named all these bits after food way before us. But anyway, if you go to the three dots there and hit analytics from within your menu, it filters analytics to that particular menu. I did not know that. You taught me
Yeah.
something.
Which, if you're wondering what the heck Sarah's talking about, if you do that from just go to analytics from your sidebar here, it'll just give you a blank analytics and you would select your menu manually here from this drop down, as I said.
But you can skip that.
You
Fancy.
can skip
Okay.
that by clicking right into it from the menu. So here it's plotting the items on this menu on the chart here, showing us our our plow horses here. These are items that are selling well, but not as profitable. Our puzzles, these are great items. They're very profitable. We're just not selling enough of them. And our dogs, our losers here. I don't like to call them dogs because I'm a dog lover, but here's the item that we probably want to get rid of that's just not making us any money, and it happens to be our side of guac and chips there.
That's an
Um,
odd name, you know. I mean, I know we didn't come up with that, but it's an odd name. Okay, so I see that, but that doesn't answer what I'm asking, right? Like, how do I save my menu?
Yep. So from here, we're going to export out this chart with underlying data, which is going to give us the ability to keep this as a
Oh,
CSV or an Excel.
okay. So three dots there. It's always about the kebab. So three dots there gives us an option to export, and then you went to underlying data,
Because
and
there's more
then
data than the dots that we see on the chart here. We want to get all that data that talks about the pricing, the
right,
costing,
everything. Okay, cool.
and we can do it as a CSV or as an Excel.
Okay. And then that, so now I have that on my desktop or in my download folder, and now I can save that as, June sales 2025 or whatever I want to do there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So perfect. So now when the owner or myself wants to look at this 6 months from now, I can come back and compare. What did we sell last June? What was the mix based on our pricing? Should we make pricing increases based on what we saw last year or maybe 3 months ago? Okay, so this is nice, but kind of can you make it prettier?
Sure. Much easier to look at if we do this as a pivot table. So we can insert a pivot table here.
So you select all and then
Yeah.
insert and then pivot table. Oh, okay, this looks scary.
Who gets intimidated by pivot tables?
I mean,
I do.
Sergio, but yes.
But Sarah
Okay,
has helped me get through this. So, and this is something that talk to us about, talk to your CSM about. We're constantly developing things, templates for this, and we see there's all that underlying data that we didn't see on that dog stars chart. All of these
right.
metrics are part of it.
So when I build a pivot table, I start with the most important thing first. My organizing principle here would be menu item name, right? Like that's what I want to see. Then can you show me my quantity sold and my total revenue, total cost, and food cost percentage? And then can you manipulate those numbers so that they have proper.
Removed it instead of taking it out. What was that one I just removed?
Sum of total cost, total revenue, I think profit maybe, or no, food cost percentage. Scroll down. There you go. Boom. Okay. So let's make the percentages and the costs have currency. So as Sergio said, this is like a 2.0 level, but if you want to manipulate the data so that it looks nice the next time that you come back to it, or is a little bit easier to read, this is one way to do that. And this is what we have as a best practice recommended at this time. So this is just us making it look a little nicer. Currency, beautiful. Gorgeous. Okay, so now at a glance, I can see that the chicken liver toast on this menu is almost 12% food cost. I can see how much money we actually made on that, how much we sold, how much we made, what portion of our revenue did that drive is all right here. And now that's saved, set aside. So when I want to come back and compare, I've got that at the touch, right? Love it. Okay, so that's what you would do if you want to save a menu. So if you follow this practice by saving every period that you want to have by exporting, then you never have to build another menu in Meez and go through all of that. You can just use Meez as the sandbox to then export from and compare your data side by side. Does that make sense to everybody? That was, again, it's a little 2.0 for this. But going from your menu into the analytics, perfect, got a thumbs up. Going from the menu into the analytics and then exporting, saving that data. And now you have it backed up as well, but you have a snapshot of what your food cost percentage was at that moment in time based on the sales mix from that period. If you do it monthly, quarterly, whatever it is. Okay. So I heard a rumor that you can build a menu based on a POS import.
That is correct.
Can we make that happen?
Yeah. So I've got a basic, this is actually what a toast level export would look like. I blanked out a lot of the columns and highlighted the columns that we actually need to bring into this scenario. So as you can see from any of the menus that we were looking at here, there's all my menus. They were right here in front of me. We need a menu item name, sell price, quantity sold. Everything else is calculated by the system here. So these are the 4 columns, and we need to make sure that our report has these columns, at least the header for it. Date and menu ID can be blank. Menu ID, again, is that number that would connect and tie it in so that if we change the spelling or if tacos carne asada is abbreviated on my menu, that doesn't matter. We'll see the whole letters when we build it, and it's the menu ID that's going to tie them together. And these might have different names too. I basically have pulled them, and we're going to see when we import this that Meez is going to walk us through mapping each of these columns to what it needs. The rest of this data, you've all seen these PMix exports. Often the server's name might be here, a station number, all kinds of different information is in these, often way too much, hundreds of columns of data. We need 5 of them. So from here, we can take this document, and I just want to know exactly what it's called here. So I'm going to save it as upload, so I know exactly what it is in my folder here. And we're going to go back into Meez and build a new menu.
Okay, so the same steps as if I were manually building.
Mm-hmm. We start there to build the blank menu, and then we're going to
Okay.
import in the sales data, which is going to actually drop in the menu item names over here.
Makes
So
sense.
from here, from the what are you calling these now? The
It's a
kebab?
kebab.
I always thought they
Yeah.
were called snack bars, but from the three dots, we saw the analytics, and now we're going to use the second option, importing the sales data. This import will replace some numbers, sales quantities, or in this case, it's going to populate all our numbers and all of our items. So upload or drop the files here. I know I have this handy in my downloads here, labeled as upload, drag and drop, easy enough. And as soon as we do that drag and drop, you see it's looking to match up. These are the columns that are in my file. These are the template fields that Meez needs. Date to date, menu item ID to menu ID, item name to menu item name, quantity sold, and then net sales.
Perfect.
Any questions there?
Nope.
I hit next. It's not finding any mistakes. If it does, it'll highlight them here. This is a small menu, so didn't see.
Red line of death again, right? Yes. Okay, so that's importing. And when I do this, all of my recipes and everything will be automatically linked?
No, we have just built, as you said before, the shell of the menu.
Right,
So now we know that these items are matching the menu item ID.
right.
And we have a menu item called add guacamole. And Shani, I hope this goes back to your question about the menu items and why we put add there. Because you'll see here, now we can start assigning recipes or ingredients to each one of these items to then build it and create that. So in
Right,
this case, the add guacamole item, this is when we're adding it as a modifier to a burrito or to whatever. So in
right.
this case, as we said before, maybe that's a 1 ounce portion.
Perfect.
But on
Okay.
guacamole and chips, and this is, we'll call this modifier again. Guacamole and chips, on the other hand, we start with the guacamole recipe again, except this time it's a 5 ounce portion. And it's also getting our tortilla chips, right?
Got it. Okay. So so it still makes sense from a best practice perspective to have my recipes built first so that I can easily add them to a menu item. One pro tip from my own menu building experience is I like to name the recipe name exactly what the menu item name is. I mean, I don't typically do from a sales import, so that's a different thing. But if I know that tacos birria is tacos birria, then it's a matter of copy paste and it's super fast to just get that into there. So if you're looking for speed or optimizing for speed later on, build your recipes in a way that matches what you call the menu item. Makes it very easy to do this. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. We would love to open the floor for questions and comments, concerns. Tina, we'd love to know why your menu situation is frustrating. If you want some help, we're here. You've got a couple experts. We can also invite you to speak if you would rather, or share your screen. But we also respect anybody that's too shy for that. Any questions from anybody else? Or we can wrap. I just have to start building and the questions will come. Yes, yes, we understand that. So we have, it's okay, Tina, no worries. Tina says she's shy, everybody. So we have live office hours Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. That happens live in our community. Dan, would you throw a link in for the community, please? Oh, Tina does primarily catering. Can we just show a quick, like how
That's
you would
great.
do this for
Yep.
catering?
I wanted
Yeah.
to, I saw that and I was wanting to do that. So,
Yes, Shani, this is recorded to review back. And also we'll link to the community because you can see all of our previous webinars are also there. lots of different topics to take a deep dive into.
So Tina, for catering, this is a great example of building a menu without using the meez menus feature. Basically, we're building an event as a recipe, as what I call a shell recipe or a master recipe, where these are all sub recipes. And then I've already confirmed the numbers, the quantities for this event so that I'm able to cost this easily enough. Because if my recipes are costed and then I'm plugging in these numbers, then I'm able to see here what's it costing me overall, what's it costing me per guest? Obviously, my demo account is missing a lot of cost if all of this food is only costing us $134. This is actually a recipe I took from a different demo account, and all the costs aren't linked in here. But you can create, of course, ingredients like convection oven rental, linen napkins. Your recipes come in here, and there's costs missing on all these for me, which is why I'm getting such a mess here. But this is going to give me a whole event, which actually, I can show this in a better place. But let me know if you have questions about that, Tina, if that's something that helps, because I see this always as a great way to build an event. And I'll show you this recipe with more cost now, actually, on a different account that I have here. Same menu. And now we see here we have our costs for the whole event, our cost per guest, because we defined it as 45 guests in this case. And then we're able to see how we should price out this whole event to make 30% food cost or to improve this for 20%. And this is something, not 2%, but this is something that we did even, before building the meez menus feature. This would be, and is still, a very useful way for caterers to use meez in this situation and build out your event and know exactly what it's costing you per guest for the entire event. Additionally, giving you, for those in the know, if you know, this export, which is a shopping list export, we call it. Two
Right.
exports you can do from here, but the order list export is very useful here because it's going to give us from all of these recipes that have a bunch of ingredients in each one. For example, onion might be a common ingredient across a bunch of these recipes. That export is going to give us one line item for every ingredient and the total quantity needed to execute these quantities for 45 or for 220 or for 2000. And that'll work backwards from those prep actions and meez to give us the total. If there's prep actions that take out a yield loss, this is exactly where catering can get tricky when your recipes all call for 22 pounds of onions, but some are diced and some are sliced. And so you actually need 25 pounds of whole onions. And
Right.
that's an extremely helpful scenario there to work backwards and give you the actual quantities.
I have a quick one I can share too, because I use this for my own personal catering. So to answer the meez integration with Toast, we are currently building it. It is currently in alpha. So hopefully that means it will be in beta by the end of the year. You can see meez right on my screen. But it is currently in process. We do not yet have pricing information on that. There will likely be an additional charge, but we don't know what that is at this time. Serge, you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is just for Tina, a get together that I did a couple years ago. And you can see, as Sergio was saying, I built out the individual dishes and then I built them into a 30-person dinner. So you can see in the sub recipes, like I made one 4-serving recipe of the salad and then rolled it up to 30 people. Same thing for the pasta that I made and the blueberry shortcake that we did. And then you could see my cost per serving on this was $5.66. Okay. And then I built out what I was going to charge for it. So I knew my profit. So ready to go. But I also separately built this into a menu just to see like what is my total cost. And if we had a couple people switch from pasta main to a gluten-free special pasta. So I added that in here at some point. And then this number would have dropped to like 24 instead of doing, or let's say 25 instead of doing 30 people. Maybe a few people were gluten-free. This allows you to really tool with that. And like, are you losing money by that happening? Do you need to make that money up somewhere else? This can help you make those decisions for building out a quote as a caterer. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions? I love that Tina got exactly what she needed. That's perfect. All right, great.
And
Thank
I'm
you all
posting a
so much.
link to the community feed right there.
Perfect. Thanks, Serge. So the community has all of our webinars stored, saved. You can go back and take a look at any of them. Okay. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Cheers. Thank you.